How technical can I go in this, by the way? How long
Technical
do you
as you
want me to
want.
talk for? Okay, fine.
There is a fast forward button on the podcast and the YouTube.
No, you will not fast forward me, man.
G'day and welcome back to the latest episode coming to you on the podcast and the YouTube. We're going to have a little bit of visual stuff in this episode, so go ahead and check that on the YouTube. Today I've got a special guest, friend of mine, David Addison from the UK. We're going to be talking about raw photos and long exposure effect on your smartphone, which I'm really excited about, and we'll get to know a little bit about you and your channel. You've got the YouTube, Instagram, you've got your own website as well. You're spread thin like me. You're generating a lot of content.
Not as much as I'd like. Yeah, I think I'm spread too thin. I'm going to be condensing seriously. Like, I'm going to be just focusing on YouTube, I think. And then the odd Instagram post here and there just to announce I have a new video. But that's it, because it's too much. It is too much.
and you do it really well. Where for me, when I post things on YouTube, I strip the audio, make that a podcast. But you seem to have a real sense of this is YouTube material. And I've seen you say this a couple of times in your videos, starting to transition into a podcast episode here. Like, you can see the difference between the two formats that I'm still struggling with. What is the difference? How do you do that?
The podcast, the audience is completely different. For me, a podcast, it could be like someone's walking around and they've got their phone in their pocket and they need some audio company, auditory company, would that be called? It doesn't matter. Whereas a YouTube video, I'm explicitly trying to answer specific questions and convey information and help people who have a problem. That's the reason I've made the video, is to help people. Whereas the reason I've made the podcast, a bit of entertainment, to maybe educate, explore an idea with someone, make them think, something like that. So I think that's the difference. Yeah. The podcast is unscripted as well. The YouTube video is not. You don't want to hear me unscripted.
I think I have.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm loving the little snippets at the end where you show us some of the unscripted stuff.
Oh, yeah. That's yeah. I say no more about that. That's the stuff that I actually put in.
Yep. So how did you get into smartphone photography? Because you used to use a big camera, and you've got a bit of a unique background with the big camera, using that.
Have I? Oh, the cruise ship. Yeah, the cruise ship. That was fun. I'd love to do that again. If the money reappears in cruise ship photography, you'll find me there. But I'll take my YouTube channel with me. Don't you worry.
That would be actually quite entertaining to see some of those exchanges with the guests on the cruise ships. I imagine you would have had all types.
Yeah, like, hey, I'm testing this new app, Polite. Can I just take your photo with it? Can you imagine? Well, I've always wanted to help people learn photography and empower them to take the best pictures that they can. And that used to be, everyone had a DSLR. You got into photography and you bought a DSLR. But now people aren't bothering anywhere near as much. They have the phones in their pocket. So naturally, I transitioned to helping people take the best pictures they can with the camera that's always with them. And that's the phone. And it was when I noticed just how, it was when I noticed that not the image quality as such, but the pictures I was getting with my iPhone, I could put them next to my D800 with 14 to 28 or 24 2.8. This is like a €5,000 setup. And the pictures were just like, with the right composition, the right lighting, the right technical knowledge applied, that they looked indiscernible. So even a pro, and I was like, just so, plus it's so convenient, the smartphone. And my back was always hurting with my D800 and stuff. Just like,
and I've got a D810 in the cupboard there. They're not that big compared to the D5, but they're still quite heavy to lug around, aren't they?
Oh, that thing's a beast. I don't regret getting that thing though, because I went to a town called Maze in Norway as part of the cruise ship. and to photograph the Northern Lights. And my camera was the only one that survived, and everyone else has died. So that and my D610, the Nikon D610, were just shooting away all night, 30-second exposures, and everyone else's. This guy had a brand new Canon 80D, brand new at the time, dead. Like, how?
No, I've actually seen some amazing photos people are capturing with their smartphone of the Northern Lights, which is pretty impressive. I mean, you have to be there. You have to be there to capture those, but it's still amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to try again, because all those pictures I took that night are all slightly out of focus, and it's bothered me ever since.
yeah, I bet. It's devastating when you get that photo and it's like, I'll come back. you just can't. It's hard. Yeah.
You know how I'm feeling.
Those 30-second photos and that sort of thing, is that where your interest in long exposure photo started, or were you already taking like waterfalls and things like that?
No, I don't. I have no interest in long exposure, believe it or not.
Oh, right.
It gets likes, which sends people over to my YouTube channel. That's why I do it. I just I find it interesting. That's I like time. I have an interest in the passage of time. I think that's where my interest in long exposure came from. That's why I'm fascinated by time lapses as well. Like, I'll just watch a time lapse on repeat. So I don't know. Yeah.
That's interesting, because it's really hard with a photo. It is, like we all know, it is a snapshot in time. And to try and communicate and to introduce storytelling and introduce that passage of time. And I've just finished putting together my stronger photo composition 4-step system, and I've got over 100 different compositional techniques and tools in there. And one of the things that I learned about was the Gestalt theory, where you can throw in things like tempo and rhythm into your composition. And for me, when I was reading all this, and because it was all new to me, because I have a very technical photography background for the last 25 years, so composition is relatively new. And all this idea of rhythm and pacing and tempo in a photo, it's like, what? How? And basically, it was
interesting. I've not heard about that before.
So basically, it's a lot easier in a panoramic, because you have more space for the eye to travel, and you try and have a point of fixation on a far extreme, either left side or the right side of the frame, and have your visual anchor there. And then you encourage the person to scan. And most of us read text from left to right, and we walk out the door and we look down and we look up. So we have a natural way that we look. And while we're scanning a photo from left to right, the placement of all those other visual elements, if they're close together, you have that grouping, your eye goes to there. But then if you have a space of negative space before you have another single item, and negative space, single item, and then you have another grouping, it kind of, your eye travels along. And this is all, milliseconds, but it's still changing your pace, the way you're reading that photo. It's fascinating. It's an interesting way of including a passage of time and rhythm to that photo. So,
yeah, it's like next level composition, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I find it fascinating.
I thought of another reason why I take so many long exposures, because I'm thinking that makes no sense. Why would you take so many long exposures if you don't even have an interest in it? And I think it's because I get to just sit there and just relax and do nothing. And as I said before, I've got a podcast on while I'm taking these long exposures, so it gives me a chance to disconnect and just sit and wait for the phone to finish what it's doing. I think that's what has drawn me to it.
That makes sense. Do you like fishing?
That makes more sense. No.
At least you get a result. When I go fishing and I sit there and relax, I don't have a result ever. So at least you have a photo at the end of it.
Yeah. Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. So exploring these long exposures on your YouTube channel, you've got quite a few videos there where you do some in-depth, and this is what I love about your channel. They're in-depth reviews of the apps and comparisons, and I know you're a huge advocate of even longer, and that's fantastic app. So how do they all work? Because I remember, I'll share a quick little story if I can. When I first started getting into the smartphone photography, I started playing around with an iPad, and I had an iPad on this big professional tripod, and Princess Bridge in Melbourne. It's looking towards the sun across the Yarra River. Beautiful setting, cityscape either side. And I was taking the long exposure using slow shutter cam at the time. And I had this guy walk up beside me and he's going, "What, are you taking a long exposure photo on your smartphone, like on your iPad?" Because it drew attention. An iPad sitting on top of a tripod. And I'm just, and you know what it's like at that time of the day, you've got like 10 minutes of beautiful lighting and then it's just gone. You got to wait for blue hour. And I'm trying to be polite to this guy and talk to him about it. And also trying to just kind of rush him off. So I thought I'll just explain to him what long exposure is and what the app's doing. Totally, like, that wasn't a great explanation. I just want to get rid of him. and then we shared Instagram handles at the time. And the next morning I checked out his Instagram, and this guy had like 400,000 followers on Instagram, and he specialized in long exposure photos. And here I was trying to explain, and he was so humble. And but he was just blown away that he had no idea. He was blown away that you could do this sort of thing on an iPad or a smartphone. And now six years later, they're just incredible. And it'd be interesting to get your insights, because you've spoken to some of these developers and just understand what is actually going on, because it is fascinating. For those of us that haven't seen a long exposure, it's pretty phenomenal.
I'm not. What happens? You'd have to get a developer on. Seriously, I'm in no position to. There's many different methods, many different algorithms that you can use. Some are readily available. As Mario Tomiak, the maker of Even Longer, said in my last podcast. Did he say that? No, sorry. Someone else has told me this recently. Just forget that I said that last bit. But don't edit me though, Mike. I want people to see unscripted David.
Okay.
There's almost like stock algorithms available for this stuff, and you can see some of these apps are using the same algorithms as each other and producing the identical results. And then you've got the likes of Mario, who are using his own that he's developed, his own APIs and things, and his own processing pipeline that just, you see what all that effort has paid off. It took him 3 years to do it. But I think the biggest insight I can give people into what's actually going on is if you go and watch my ultimate comparison, slow shutter comparison, I actually slow down. There's a bit where I capture a roller coaster, and you see it capturing each individual frame, 30 frames per second, sometimes 60 frames per second. And it's like taking each frame and then it's lowering the opacity, and then taking another one and lowering the opacity to create the illusion of motion blur. That's the best insight that I can give you. I'm not that way, sorry.
It appears to be frame averaging, doesn't it? And then it's the different type of blend mode between each of those frames. It seems to be what's happening.
I don't even know if the frames are blending together, to be honest. From what I saw from that roller coaster, I've no idea, to be honest.
So slowing it down just confused you even more.
There could be some interpolation going on there, which is like, I don't know how technically minded your audience are. They watch you, so they're pretty damn smart. So they know probably what interpolation is. It's like two frames talking to each other. Like, hey, what's going on in your frame? Oh, this, okay.
Yeah. I love it.
Swapping ideas. So maybe there's some of that going on.
And the light trails, I guess, and it's purely just a guess, that I used to go to camera clubs and I was trying to get them to suspend their prejudice towards a smartphone and kind of open their eyes to what was achievable. And I would use the example, the party trick of the little LED light on a string, and then spin it around and do that light orb in front of them in real time. And the way I explained to them, and I had no idea, but it was a way that made sense to them and to me, was that it's kind of frame averaging, but then it's like lightened mode. So it's only keeping between those frames, it's averaging them all, but it's keeping in every single frame the lightest parts, which is the lights going around. Now, I could be completely wrong because, understandably, developers are keep it close to their chest about how they actually do it. Because, I mean, like I said, 3 years it took Mario to bring his to market, and so we're also grateful that he did, because it just brings so much. I mean, when you could do something different like that, I think that is that just brings so much joy and fulfillment to us out there taking photos. I mean, we already love what we're doing, have a passion for it, but when we could do something unique like that, it's super cool, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Though, as soon as you mentioned RAW, I'm just like, yes, please. And I just love that focus. I love so many apps these days are trying to do a million things in one. I'm just like, no, just focus on one thing and do that thing the best. And that's what I love. And just going back to what you said about light trails, yeah, I would imagine that's the only way to do it, to be honest. Is what you mentioned was called maximum. If you go on your blend modes or your not your blend modes, like I always get averages and stack modes and blend modes mixed up. Stack mode, it's a maximum stack mode that takes the maximum value of each pixel. And anyway, boring.
So you mentioned raw photos, and I know, listening to Greg McMillan on the Tiny Shutter podcast.
Who?
They used Greg here.
Oh yeah, that old guy. Yeah, I know.
I was waiting for you.
Greg McMillan. He was relevant about 80 years ago, wasn't he?
Oh no, you can't say that. so when he was relevant and he was on that podcast, they were talking about when, the Apple, hopefully with the iPhone, one day they'll bring a RAW ability to us, and fast forward quite a few years, and at the time they were speculating, going, do we really want RAW? Do we really need it? Like, it's just, we're going to end up with photos that look really like a NEF file or a CRT. It's just going to look flat and bland, and then you have to edit every single photo. It's not exactly what's happened with Apple. Like, they've brought out their Pro RAW, and you mentioned the word pipeline. They do lots of different things, but it's still a RAW at the end of it. So for those of us that are moving from SLR, mirrorless, and using our smartphone more and more, can you explain to us the difference between a RAW that they would be familiar with and a RAW, and if there is any difference, a RAW that we capture on our phone using Halide, Lightroom, or even longer?
Well, with Pro RAW, it's not technically a RAW. It's technically something called a linear DNG, which is closer to a TIFF file. All DNGs are not created equal. So yeah, it's a RAW file that's been demosaicked, which, again, demosaicking is how technical can I go in this, by the way? How long do you want to talk for? Okay, fine.
There is a fast forward button on the podcast and the YouTube.
No, you will not fast forward me, man. I'm definitely going to watch this back now so I can check.
You will be.
So just a little bit of an aside, and then I'll answer your question. In fact, no, I won't even tell you what demosaicing is. I'll tell you later, because it's too much of an aside. I will answer your actual question that you asked me. The difference between an old school RAW file that you take on your DSLR compared to a RAW file that you take on your phone, there is no difference. It's what's called a bio RAW. In fact, yeah, I will go into demosaicing, because in order to explain what a bio RAW is, then I have to explain that. So basically, your camera sensor, it's just a collection of millions of photo sites, or pixels, if you like. There's 12 million of them in your iPhone sensor, and they can't see color. They just see, or they see, for lack of a more technical term, they see in black and white. So over each photo site is over the photo sites is something called a color filter array, or a CFA, and the pattern that the CFA is in is called the Bayer pattern. So it's like there's more greens than it's RGB. So there's green, red, green, and blue. but there's more greens than reds and blues because the way eyes pick up greens is different. That's that's a fact. Everything I'm saying is completely factual, by the way. Do not fact check me.
Okay, do not edit, do not fact check.
Yeah. But basically, because how to explain this? So each photo site has a different color over it. They only have one color. So they're all looking over it at each other. Like, so say I'm the photo site in the sensor with the green filter over me. I'm looking at my friends like, red, blue, and I'm taking all this information, and that's called demosaicing because because the filter pattern is in like a mosaic. So you demosaic it to get the color in your raw files, and that's what so have I explained why it's called a Bayer pattern? The guy who came up with the pattern his name is Bayer, something Bayer. Now you can look that up because I don't know what his name is anymore. His name is Bayer anyway. And yeah, so your phone or your camera isn't demosaicing the file, your software is. That's why a lot of computers can't open raw files without any special software because they can't they can't demosaic the file. And Lightroom's going to demosaic your file, for example, Camera Raw, Photoshop, Capture One, whatever you use is going to demosaic it for you. And yeah, so that's a really long-winded way of answering the question. There is no difference. The only slight difference would be is that they use the DNG file format on your iPhone, which is an Adobe invented format. They've worked with Apple to optimize it for iPhone and things like that, but you can use DNG with any raw file, really.
Yeah, fantastic.
Did I answer that question? I'm so sorry. That was such a bad, long-winded answer.
No, that was great. I mean, that that was brilliant. That was perfect. No, you went technical, but I love I'm wearing a green.
I'm jumping all over the place.
I'm wearing a green hat. What's my blue friend and my red friend doing? it's really cool.
It makes sense, though, right?
It does. Sense. I've got a visual in my head of all these little things popping up, just checking out each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then you need the program at the end to actually make sense of it all. So so some apps like Lightroom Mobile. For the free version, you get access to 90% of the features. One feature that the subscription, and it's so cheap now, the subscription, one of the features that you do get as a bonus is that you can work with raw photos. So there's lots of apps out there that you can. Snapseed is another one. Any others that you can think of? Great one. Yeah, go straight into a develop mode.
Yeah. Raw Power, Darkroom for the mobile is good. There's loads of them. If I didn't have constraint, I'd have loads of them on my phone, but I need to show constraint, as an app, as the guy who is now apparently like known as the app reviewer guy. I need to know about all these things.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, as you said, when we go onto YouTube, we're looking for understanding, we're looking for answers. So, and there's not many other people out there that are reviewing apps in depth like that. But that said, some of your other videos talking about the features like the cinematic mode on the iPhone, I found that one was really entertaining.
Yeah. That one was me letting my personality come out a little bit more.
Yeah, and eat an apple.
Eat an apple. Yeah.
Has he started the channel yet?
He was a good sport to come on. I'm not sure if that video's got him in trouble with his Apple overlords, but
That's awesome. It's good fun. All right, I've got a couple of photos that you shared with us, so we'll just share those and just go through.
Let me put my glasses back on. If you do ask me any more questions, I'll try and answer much more coherently this time.
No worries. All right, can you see that one there?
Yeah, that's my Conway Falls photo.
I have a bit of as you know, I'm a systems person, and my background was technical and photography, so I needed to come up with a checklist. And what I was through, what is the intention of this photo? what is the composition, with capture
Mhm.
technique, and then editing technique. And each of those I have a step by system. So can you just explain to us what the intention of this photo was, how you composed it?
Yeah, there was no thought gone into the composition whatsoever, and the intention was to get content for a video. And that's it.
Okay. Right. Okay. Why did you share this photo then?
To let people know I had a new video coming out about. No, I suppose to go a little bit more, there was no other real composition I could get. If you were there, you would see I was extremely limited. I do have a behind the scenes photo of this. It might be on Instagram, it might not be, but you will see like it's either this or handheld piece of junk composition, a snapshot. So this was, yeah. I don't think it's too bad.
But saying that, that's one of the things I love about composition is that once you understand the basics, a lot of it is actually intuitive. And when like I mentioned that stronger photo composition 4-step system with over 100 techniques and tools, I had a lot of people say, Mike, that's just too much. Like, how am I going to look at and apply all these different techniques? But it comes down to really the 4 steps. Where do you position the main subject? So here we've positioned the main subject of water flowing in the center there. Where do we position the other elements? So the other elements is where you've cropped it. You can see the rocky bit on the right there with the moss that has intersected with the water, so that it and a lot of this is just reviewing it and going, oh yeah, this is why it looks good.
Yeah, make me look good, Mike.
Yeah, but
I was definitely thinking about the intersection of the moss.
but that's where this is what I love about photos is I love dissecting photos and understanding going, this is why this looks cool, this is why I like it. What appeals to, and I've just written a blog on this about assessing your own visual literacy using Bloom's taxonomy, and like I've got a bit technical with that article, but I talk about the ability to be able to break things down and then analyze it and then recreate it yourself. So I look at things like that. I'm a bit different maybe, but for me, the brightness of the water stands out, and that looks really cool. But my eye then goes to the moss, and the reason why it goes to the moss is because yes, it's cut out and it's interrupting that water flow, but also the vignette that you've got there kind of stops my eye from traveling into the corners and brings me back to the water. Yep.
Nice one. Yeah, there was definitely some framing going on there, isn't there? Well, I wouldn't have shared this. I wouldn't have sent it to you. I wouldn't have put it in the video if I didn't think it was a decent photo, because one of the challenges of being a photography YouTuber is I want to have credibility behind what I'm saying. I want my words to have a weight behind them. And I think in order to do that, I have to take decent photos with the apps that I'm reviewing. I see a lot of reviewers, they're just in their little studio and they're taking pictures of whatever is around them, and I'm like, no, I want to see you go out and actually test yourself. So I drove 2.5 hours to get this photo. This was the second time I was there in that location. The first time, completely overexposed, wrong time of day, midday, sun coming right down, all that was just blown out completely. That's a raw file, by the way. I buy a raw file. Yeah, I'm blown away with what you can do with the highlights icon. And that's a single image. That's not bracketed or anything. So I was able to get a decent exposure in raw. Like, amazing.
And which app did you use to capture this long exposure effect?
This will be Halide, I think. I'm not sure, because I use so many, and I was comparing apps on this day. So I'm taking many, many different pictures in different apps. So I want to say Halide, but I'm not sure. And I will have I had a filter on it, an ND filter.
Oh, nice. Do you use accessories very often?
No, because I've upgraded to the 13 Pro Max and I can't find anything that fits it yet. So not at the moment.
All right. I want to have a look at your light trial one, so I'm having trouble bringing it up.
It's all right. I shall describe it to the people. It's a beautifully, masterfully composed image.
I'm editing this bit out.
No, you are not. It's an award-worthy image that I captured from an overpass.
All right, there we go. I've got it. Beautiful.
Drum roll. This is the best picture you've ever seen about to appear. That's mine.
All right. So what's striking for me with this one, David, is that I've always struggled with light trails with the smartphone, because I always end up with that as you described, that Morse code, the dot 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 dot. And so how did you achieve this one?
This is real light trails backing up the fake light trail effect. So it's as the app is capturing the frames, each frame is 1 second long in reality. So if you don't do that, if you have a shutter speed of even a half a second, that sounds like a long time, half a second, but when the car's traveling fast, it's not. You're still going to get that Morse code thing. And yeah, the faster your shutter speed, the worse your effect's going to look. So here I had to use an ND filter. Well, I left my holder at home because I'm an idiot. So I literally held the filter in front of the lens like this, and in order to do that without getting light leakage, I had to use the telephoto lens on the iPhone 12 Pro at the time. Again, like just to cut out some light, I used the 12 Pro because Eva Longo doesn't have manual controls, which is something Mario and I discussed. So I wasn't able to manually override the ISO or the shutter speed to get it where I wanted. I had to kind of trick the phone and trick the app into getting down to a 1 second shutter speed, because that's a challenging photo with the light background and the light trails.
You've got quite a lot of dynamic range there with the bottom of the screen there, the shadows, and then you got that bright sky with all those highlights. It's captured quite a lot of range there.
Yeah. Like again, I'd love to see if I still have. Maybe I deleted the original DNG. I don't know. Maybe I still have it, but I'd love to show you the original, see what it actually looks like. It's obviously cropped into a square for Instagram, and I think that building on the right, that's a Holiday Inn. I photoshopped out the Holiday Inn logo, and but apart from that, I don't know what I did to it.
Yeah. No, fantastic. I love the leading lines. It's good.
I think I might do a long how to make a how to use light trails, because like you're like the fifth person who's asked me how do I do real like good looking light trails with my phone, and there seems to be an audience for it. So I think that might be one of my next videos.
Oh, nice. Look forward to that one. Fantastic.
Me too. Sorry, can I piggyback on what I was saying about the light trails?
Yeah, absolutely.
So here I don't have any individual shutter speed. Here is a fail from tonight. This is from tonight. Can you see?
Yes,
on the screen
that.
Yep. the brokenness. That is that's Spectre camera. Yuck, horrible, because it's choosing a shutter speed that's way too fast. So basically, it only has exposure compensation, and I bring down the exposure compensation, but it compensates by increasing the shutter speed, which I don't want it to do.
No.
So okay. I override the shutter speed and I switch to a different app, and I get magnificent looking light trails, and that's unedited. Wow. That's straight out of the camera in even longer.
Yeah, wow.
So I will definitely do, and you can see in the corner there. You have to believe me. It says 1 second, so that's a 1 second per frame.
Yeah, right.
Picture.
Yep.
And that's over 10 seconds. That's 191 frames. So 191 Wait, that can't be right. If that's a one, right? Okay, you'll like this, Mike.
Yep.
That picture was taken over 10 seconds, and each frame is 1 second. But it's captured 191 of them. So how is it? So surely that should be like a 3-minute exposure almost.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I mean, if it's a 1 second capture, is it actually capturing multiple frames to make that 1 second capture?
We need that.
Sure.
We need the Illuminati.
It's getting very late there now, isn't it?
Yeah, like some triangle. I am watching you. I'm going to ask Mario about that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Maybe we shouldn't have all this information to start questioning. Just go. Here's the go button. There's the result.
Yeah,
just leave it a mystery. Yeah.
Exactly. Just don't tell me, because people like me will question it and get really pedantic about it.
Yeah. So I might wrap it up there, David. Where can so we've talked about your channel a lot. Where do people find you on YouTube? You
can go to just search David Addison. I'm the handsome guy in the orange coat, smiling like this. And
I think it's a profile, isn't it?
Don't subscribe to me if you're not interested in photography. But if you are interested in photography and you want to learn, especially with your phone, then you can subscribe to me. I give you permission. Otherwise, go away. Don't follow me anywhere else, especially on Twitter. Delete Twitter, get out and speak to people in real life. It's so much better. There you go.
You're speaking my language. I had a Facebook group and found myself continually on Facebook, wasting my life. And now, as we mentioned, now I have a forum on my own platform and don't have anywhere near as much engagement there, but the people on there are real. And not that Facebook wasn't, but the people are there because they have an intention. They are really interested in photography and want to learn and connect with other like-minded people. Yeah, we could have another episode talk about social media and photographers on social media, couldn't we?
I think we could, Mike.
Yeah,
we should. Mike. I tell you what. On the next episode of my podcast, you can come on and we'll just shoot the breeze, talk about all this stuff.
Yeah, sounds great.
What do you reckon?
Perfect. Love to. Absolutely love to.
Excellent.
Yep. All right, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you, everyone, for joining and watching, listening, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.